Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton, and today we're discussing college football's top hires for 2026. We're just going to do a basic 5-man list of who I think were long-term the best hires that were made this offseason. And there were a lot of hires made this offseason. Not all of them were impressive. I have my misgivings about some of them. I think I've stated in previous podcasts from last year, Arkansas's hire was not great at all. I'm worried about Auburn's hire of Alex Golish. And yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But again, the focus for this podcast is the best hires, and we'll go from 5 to 1. And with that being said, I unfortunately have to start in Gainesville. At number 5, we have John Summerall. Again, I think my feelings on the Gators are well known on this podcast, but as much as it pains me to say it, I believe that UF lucked out by not getting Lane Kiffin. I know that sounds crazy, but I think there was this perception that Lane Kiffin could have been the next Steve Spurrier if he came to Gainesville. I just don't know if the appeal was there for Lane. He wanted too much power, it seems, and the board at UF, it didn't sit right with them. And so they decided to go in a different direction after Lane pretty much understood that he wasn't going to get what he wanted. So then he went and pivoted to LSU because LSU was courting him hard as well. So that being said, Summerall has coached in the South for years. He started off as a University of Kentucky GA, then worked his way up in San Diego as the D-line, linebacker, and assistant head coach before going to Tulane as the co-defensive coordinator. He jumped to Troy to become the assistant head coach. He also coached linebackers and special teams before he made his return to the SEC for a bigger job in Ole Miss as the linebacker coach. He then went back to his alma mater in Kentucky to become the linebacker / co-defensive coordinator. After all this, he finally got his first head coaching gig at Troy, where he proceeded to go 12-2 and 11-2 before taking over for Tulane and going 9-5 and 11-3. Summerall understands the need to build and win out in the trenches. He's got a hard-nosed, no-nonsense approach, and the results show it. Again, I think Kentucky, him being a native of that school, I thought it was a miss on their part. But again, I think it's Florida's gain. There isn't a lack of talent down in Florida. And I believe that the shift from Billy Napier to Summerall will still have people guessing because, again, it's another group of 5 coach who has a lot of hype around him. And there's a lot of expectations. But Billy just wasn't an X and O's guy. And he didn't save himself by hiring an offensive coordinator and making sure that he was more of a head coach as opposed to a head coach, OC, lead recruit, all this stuff. And he had so many responsibilities that the talent wasn't reflected on the field. And as a coach, there's certain times where you have to swallow your pride. And Billy wasn't able to do that. And I think that's one of the differences. I think Summerall is a better X's and O's guys than Billy Napier ever was. So a 6-year contract is a vote of confidence from UF. And I think they really expect Summerall to hit the ground running. Like I said, there's not a lack of talent at Florida. There's not as much talent as there's been in the past, but I think with the actual coaching upgrade, it could make the difference in certain situations in close games that failed to appear under Napier. The Gators do have a tough schedule this year, but a 7-5 record is not out of the realm for year one. I know it's a mediocre record at UF, but this is a program that has been 6-7, 5-7, 8-5, 4-8 in the past 4 years, and has fallen behind their main rivals like Georgia. I mean, even Tennessee has been more successful than Florida in the past few years. I believe Summerall raises the floor of the program, which is really what Florida needs right now. And I think in due time, he will bring the culture that the heads of the program expect to be instilled in Gainesville. And most importantly, it's going to be a winning culture. At number 4, I've got Colin Klein at Kansas State. The prodigal son returns home to Manhattan. Klein signed a 5-year deal. He was a former QB for the Wildcats. He went 21-5 in his last 2 years. And they peaked at number 2. And he finished 3rd in the Heisman in 2012. The 36-year-old worked his way up the coaching ranks. He was at Kansas State initially. He was a low-level assistant, then a QB coach, co-offensive coordinator, and he became the main offensive coordinator by 2022. Texas A&M made him their offensive coordinator in 2024, and after success there, Kansas State brought him back. And again, he was successful at both stops. In 2022, Kansas State averaged 421.6 yards per game to go along with 32.3 points. In 2023, they improved with 445 yards per game and 37.1 points per game. In 2025, Texas A&M averaged 36.3 points per game, 454 yards, and 192.7 rushing yards. The previous year, A&M had the number 2 rushing offense in the SEC at 195.5 yards per game. This is the key with Klein. He has shown that he can run a high-powered offense that isn't totally built on spacing and pacing with the passing game. You can still grind opponents out and hit the big plays over the top. I believe with Avery Johnson's dual threat ability, Klein will be out in front of the Big 12 rankings when it comes to offense. Now, with Kansas State, it isn't really a rebuild. It's more of a reload. They were 6-6 last year. 5 of the 6 losses were by 1 score. And the other one was a drubbing by Texas Tech, 43-20. But again, I believe Klein can be the difference in those games with his offensive scheme. Therefore, a winning season, again, isn't out of reach for Kansas State. And again, you got to realize with a team like Kansas State, there's the concept of going up against an NIL behemoth in Texas Tech and trying to compete in the new age of college football, which is why hiring someone like Klein is so important for this program. You get the young up-and-coming coordinator who not only is familiar with your program because he played and coached there, but he has shown success in other stops as well. It's the SEC. For all the hype that they get, there is a lot of NFL caliber bodies that play there. And he showed with Texas A&M, without stellar QB prowess there, he's shown he was able to create an offensive force within those limitations. And that is, again, something that this program can lean on. Because Avery Johnson's a good college football quarterback. He's not going to make any noise in the NFL. Again, there's limitations with him like there were in Texas A&M. You have the ability to run like Marcel Reed, but the accuracies are an issue there. So it becomes limiting in how you can execute certain things. But again, Klein has been able to show that he can hide that stuff. To me, this is a great hire. It's going to show up in the long run, not only in recruiting and wins, but also, I think, in energizing the fan base, in donor activity, ticket sales, et cetera, et cetera. At number 3, I got Bob Chesney for UCLA. The Bruins hired the former James Madison head coach, who has a 132-51 record across Division III, Division II, FCS, and FBS levels. In 16 seasons as a head coach, he's only had 1 losing season. He's developed a reputation as a program builder. I know it's generic, but again, you see it. He's gone across every single level of football. And he is a culture changer. And he's bringing it fast to UCLA. He brought 41 transfers with him, along with his offensive coordinator, Dean Kennedy, and his defensive coordinator as well. He's not to worry about the QB position as Nico's staying. I mean, he was really excited, really invigorated when they announced the hire, so he wasn't going to transfer. He was a strong candidate for the Penn State job, but for some reason, Penn State wasn't really, I guess, keen on hiring him because they went with Matt Campbell. But to me, UCLA hit a home run with this hire. With the talent influx of the 41 transfers and the last two disaster hires in Chip Kelly and Deshaun Foster, Chesney is welcome to usher in an era of stability for the Bruins. With his new 5-year deal, he is a native of Pennsylvania. The only concern is he will have his work cut out for him in terms of recruiting because he's always been based on the East Coast area. Now, you can cast a wide netting for that. UCLA is a great school when it comes to education. You do have a talent-rich state. And again, you may not be able to compete with the likes of Oregon, USC, and other Big Ten schools when it comes to pillaging the state for talent. But this is a guy who shows that he can do more with less. I think this is going to pay dividends immediately. And to me, 3 to 4 win improvement is a strong possibility. If you can convince Nico to stay one more year, the 2027 season could be a special one because, again, it's the proof of concept. You're bringing in those 41 transfers mainly from James Madison, but from other places as well. You can show people quickly, hey, this is what can be done here. You bring the star quarterback for one more year of development, and UCLA could be a lot feistier than people expect in a much sooner capacity. At number 2, I have Eric Morris out of Oklahoma State. Unfortunately, Mike Gundy ran his course at his alma mater, and Oklahoma State was in the market for a head coach for the first time in 20-odd years. And I think they made one of the great hires in the offseason. To me, it was only eclipsed by one other hire, but maybe in any other season, I think this would have been one of the number 1 hires. And I know that might sound like hyperbole, but this guy fits Oklahoma State. To me, they got him for a bargain at 5 years, $20 million. This is an individual who has recruited and coached QBs such as Patrick Mahomes, Cam Ward, John Mateer, and Drew Mestemaker. By the way, Drew was the 2025 leader in passing, and he transferred to Oklahoma State to follow Eric Morris. In hindsight, this is an impressive list, obviously. However, let's look at the facts. Patrick Mahomes was a 3-star recruit. Cam Ward had 0 stars to his name. John Mateer was a 3-star recruit out of high school, and Drew Mestemaker was a walk-on. We all know what happened with Patrick Mahomes. Multiple-time Super Bowl champion, one of the greatest quarterbacks of our generation so far. Ward ended up becoming a 4-star transfer, 94 overall, and the number 1 pick. Mateer became a 4-star transfer with a 95 overall label, and Mestemaker became a 5-star transfer, 98 overall. Mestemaker was a walk-on. Let me reiterate that. Nobody saw anything in this kid. 6'4", good arm, walked on to Texas State and became one of the leading passers in the nation. This is a coach who has an eye for talent that is undervalued by the market and develops them into stars, which is a much-needed attribute in Stillwater. Being a head coach at North Texas also allowed for him to build recruiting ties in the talent-rich state. Oklahoma State does have strong facilities and a stadium with solid NIL contributions. Morris has shown that he can produce with undervalued talent. Now imagine him with some resources. That's why I think this hire is so good. He has that ability to run the exciting offenses that have been expected by the Oklahoma State fandom. But again, you're seeing a common theme here. You have to see how these teams can perform in this unregulated NIL world where there's teams like Ohio State, Miami, Texas that have $40 million rosters. If everybody was on the same playing field where the cap was where it's supposed to be at 20 million and change, Brad Bielema said it best. I can compete if there's a $5 million difference, if there's a $6 million difference. But when you have double the NIL pool that another team does, it starts to get fans and coaching staffs to question how they can compete. And you have to find advantages wherever you can. Eric Morris, with his ability to develop QB playmakers, will play a large part in how Oklahoma State will be successful over the next few years. And at number 1, I got James Franklin of Virginia Tech. To me, clearly, as number 1, he is, in my view, the best hire of the offseason, bar none. Franklin brings a sense of legitimacy to Virginia Tech because, again, ever since Frank Beamer left, and even the last half decade of Frank Beamer was kind of just a nostalgic, like, well, we have a really good coach. We have a legendary coach. And, it's been a fun ride, but we're not really competing anymore. And you missed on some hires, but this hire of James Franklin coincides with the school understanding that it has lagged in football spending and has committed to not being left behind in this new world. With Franklin at the helm, this was easier to push to boosters and alumni to donate more to the cause. Now, I think we've all heard my beliefs with Franklin in the past when it comes to big games at Penn State, but make no mistake about it, his floor was consistent. If he can establish an 8 to 9 win floor for Virginia Tech, the leaders of the school and the fan base will welcome the return to relevancy with open arms. There's a lot of talent in the DMV area, and Franklin has recruiting relationships there due to his previous stop at Penn State. Now, to me, he made an intriguing choice when he retained Brent Pry as the defensive coordinator. Now, I say retained him because he was the former head coach, and he was just fired by the school, but he thought it would be a good idea to bring him in as the DC. And players have stated this move helped them decide to stay at Virginia Tech. This has led to a solid nucleus for Franklin to build off of. And there's a possibility for Virginia Tech to make some serious noise in year 1. Again, what we will talk about is he has to show that proof of concept to future recruits, to future transfers, because again, you could take advantage of getting those Penn State kids to transfer with you, to keep some of the blue chippers at Virginia Tech that they were recruiting. But it's about building more and more for the future. In the long run, Virginia Tech, to me, is showing with this hire that they are serious about college football again, which is a good thing because, again, the ACC is probably not going to be around for much longer in its current iteration. But if you can have a school like Virginia Tech to lead the new version of it, or if the ACC somehow finds a way to stay together, minus a few schools like maybe and FSU, you can still have that was once a strong powerhouse in the upper portion of the country for the ACC. Again, think about it. You can have a nucleus of teams that consists of Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Louisville, Virginia Tech, UNC. That's a nice group of schools. You can throw an SMU in there, obviously, as well. It's a nice group of schools that can show that they do care about football and they want to be competitive. It might be too little too late for the ACC, but again, this is Virginia Tech focusing on where they fit into the future landscape of college football. And they made a great hire in doing that by getting James Franklin. That's it for today's episode, folks. those are my picks for the best hires. Coming up, we really have to pump out some content. I've fallen behind, unfortunately. I've got some episodes ready about, again, we're going to be doing the conference previews with the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and then our previews for and FSU. And very shortly, this Saturday, we'll be having FSU's Week 0 game against New Mexico State. So there's going to be a lot of episodes coming out this week. Hope you're looking forward to it. You know the drill already. If you find us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, throw in a comment if you want. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Give us that 5-star rating. Subscribe there. Turn the notifications on so you know when we post. And you can follow us on Spotify as well. However you may be listening, however you may be finding us, we thank you for engaging. And with that being said, thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by. And we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights. Have a good one, folks.